Andy for coming along. Since becoming Greater Manchester Mayor last year, I think it's fair to say that Andy's impressed everyone with his determination and drive to improve things for the region and get a better deal for us from Westminster. No one can fail to be impressed by the huge amount of work Andy's put in and the growing number of policies and initiatives he's implementing, all for the good of the towns of Greater Manchester. But I think for me, one of the best things Andy's done is straddle the political divide. He's listened and he's taken advice from many people, whatever their beliefs, bringing them on board and using their talents and knowledge. As a journalist, I find this so refreshing, especially in these difficult times. As I said, Andy, you've been there for 10 months now, but before that, as we all know, you were MP for 17 years. So before we open up to the floor, I wondered if you could share with us perhaps the biggest difference between the two roles, apart from the obvious one that you're the boss now, and perhaps tell us about any upcoming initiatives you may have in the pipeline.
Okay, thanks very much, Janet, and thanks everybody for coming out. It's brilliant to see so many of you here at this great venue. Actually, I've never been before. Thanks to the Old Courts for having us. 10 months, yeah, it's obviously been a big change for me. It was a wrench leaving the great town, the brilliant people of Leigh. You know, obviously was very emotionally attached, still am. But I actually feel, you know, in my time as an MP in those 16 years, that I felt frustration at times that I couldn't do enough, as much as I wanted to do for the borough. You know, I think this is the way our system works. You can go down and you can ask as many questions as you like, do as many speeches as you like in Parliament. It doesn't, in the end, change the reality. You know, I could have mentioned every day, I nearly did, that Leigh didn't have a train station. It still didn't bring one. So, in the end, I kind of, you know, fell out of love really with the Westminster system, and I just felt, you know, the time was to do something different, get politics closer to people again. Do things more for ourselves, and the arrival of devolution was the chance to do that. And I think it's early days, but you know, the way I see it is, this isn't about me necessarily kind of putting all about party politics. It is about the place first, you know, building up the place that where we all live and we all want to see improve, and then, as you say, work with people on that basis. So it's early days, you know, there's some good progress so far, but, you know, I honestly feel this is the best chance we're ever going to get to challenge the north-south divide, to do things more for ourselves, you know, do things the way we want to do them rather than the way Westminster tells us to do them. And the more that people kind of get involved and come to nights like this and build this with us, the stronger it will be. And I'll be the first to say, you know, I'm ready to be challenged tonight on anything that we've got going on and issues that you may have, and that's the purpose of tonight. And feel free to raise whatever you want to raise. But you know, I'm really kind of upbeat really about our prospects. Greater Manchester has the best devolution deal of anywhere in the country. That's been hard won by Peter, but the other leaders of Greater Manchester, you know, they made the argument and they won the argument, and we got given more power than anywhere else. And just at this moment, when there's a lot of negativity at national level in the political debate, we've got the chance to kind of cut through that and give a positive vision of Greater Manchester that enables us to move forward faster than perhaps our rivals can. And I'm just determined that we use it. You asked me about current initiatives, Janet. Just one I'll mention. You know, one of the things I said when I stood was there was a need for everyone in Greater Manchester to feel a part of it. So all of the towns of Greater Manchester are kind of feeling a sense of the growth and the benefits from being part of Greater Manchester. You know, I think a lot of people might say, oh, it's all about the city centre, or it's all about the airport or Media City, and maybe they've not always felt that it's about everywhere. Well, you know, a couple of things relevant to this borough. As Mayor, I launched a town centre challenge where I said I wanted to see a greater focus on our towns and potentially more residential development in our town centres, moving it away from the issue about the green belt. And I'm really pleased that the borough put forward Leigh. Obviously a bit of bias there from my point of view, but Leigh is the town centre nomination for Wigan, and I really hope we can work with all the public funding agencies and developers to see if we can really breathe life back into Lee. And if it's a success, I'm more than happy to go to other towns in the borough. The other thing, just very quickly to say, actually following a lot of the work that Donna did on the cultural portfolio, and Linda Thomas, Councillor Linda Thomas, leader of Bolton Council, is here tonight. We're just confirming today, actually, this evening, our awards to the cultural organisations in Greater Manchester. It's really, to pick up on what I was just saying, it's good for me to be able to say tonight that for the first time, I think, Peter can correct me if I'm wrong, but for the first time, a Wigan organisation is receiving Greater Manchester cultural funding, and that's Wigan STEAM. I think they're here somewhere this evening. Yeah, there they are on the second row. Fantastic organisation working in schools, mixing science with arts. So I hope people might see evidence that this Greater Manchester thing we're building is as much about Wigan as it is about Salford and city centre Manchester. Okay.
So, Donna, you going to say something about that with Linda? Yeah.
Okay. Right. Is that on there? Right, well, could I just reintroduce myself? I'm from just across the border in Daisy Hill in West Horton. I'm the new leader of Bolton Council, and I'm really thrilled. Andy's actually asked me to do the culture portfolio, and it's actually great for me because I'm so used to having to do children's and adults, and I think this is just going to be so mind-blowing, this culture portfolio. We've always had a good track record in Manchester, in AGMA, of giving grants to the arts, but I think now we're just going one step further. We're just raising the bar a little bit, and we're actually allocating £7 million to the culture and arts for grants to organisations. And yes, we're giving grants to some of the big organisations that are internationally famous, like the Halle and the Lowry and the Royal Exchange, but also the organisations that you just mentioned here now that are working in our communities, that are community ambassadors, that are a real asset to our community, and give us sort of a feeling of general well-being and good and giving us good health. They are every bit as important as some of these big organisations. And hopefully, once you see the benefits of having some funding from this cultural portfolio, hopefully it will encourage others to sort of start organisations that are equally as good, because we want all this permeating right down. We experience a lot of cuts to our services, and to be honest, without organisations that we are giving money to at the moment, and more organisations in the future, we really will struggle as council. So you are very, very important to us. And I don't know whether Donna wants to say a little bit about how we did it, and it was very democratic, and it wasn't sort of just giving to the big organisations and then leaving everybody scrabble around for the crumbs. It was done extremely thoroughly, and I'm pleased to say that all the arts, or most of the arts organisations and sport organisations that received money previously have received what they've asked for, and we've also got about 11 new projects, which is really, really uplifting for us. So get the message out there that we're really interested in culture. The Mayor's really interested in culture, so if the Mayor says it's good for us, then it's got to be good for us, hasn't it? And who would argue with him? Perhaps Peter.
A lot of people.
Okay, anyway, I'll shut up now, but I am quite looking forward to this portfolio, as you can see, so I'll hand over to Donna.
Welcome to the Old Courts. Thanks very much to Johnny and Dave and the team for hosting us this evening. I'm not sure if you're aware, but you're in the third biggest arts venue in Europe in this building here today. It's absolutely phenomenal, so it's fantastic that Andy's picked this building. I'd like to thank Linda for all the support, and I'd also like to thank Marie-Claire. Can Marie-Claire stand up, please, if she's in the room today? And Alison Gordon, who've helped us with this really difficult process. We had so many fantastic applications, and to whittle it down to the 28 projects that we've picked has been so difficult. But what Andy's really brought to it is a sense of spreading it out beyond the centre of Manchester, so it's going to places that have never had it before, including Wigan. So can I just ask Liz, come on Liz, come forward. Can I give Liz a round of applause? From Wigan STEAM. They've got £99,000 for the first time a Wigan project. Yes, has got some money.
Hi, thanks, Donna. So I'm from Wigan Steam. Fortunately, nothing to do with steam engines. It's science, tech, engineering, arts and maths. What we do is we use the arts to engage children and young people in the STEM subjects. And we also use science and technology to create artworks. We were really lucky that 2 years ago we received some investment from the Community Investment Fund as part of the deal, and that really jump-started us from being a collective, loose collective of artists working together to an organisation. We can deliver strategic objectives, we're working in schools, we're raising levels of engagement in STEM. Big thing for us is engaging girls in STEM subjects. There's a huge barrier that girls seem to experience when they hit their age of about 12, 13, that they think STEM isn't for them. Big thing for us is saying, yes, STEM is for you. That's where the future careers are. That's where the high-value jobs are. And it's about empowering those girls, those young women, to start up organisations similar to us, to draw down more investment for the North West. So you might have seen us, we're actually on Library Street. We've got a small gallery space there. So this investment from GMCA, we're going to be able to do some commissions for local artists to work with us, to exhibit in the gallery and to take the work around schools as well. What else are we going to be up to? We're running a health and wellbeing programme. It's called Creative Flow. We're partnered with the Brick on that and with Shirley at Fairclempt. So we're not just working in the town centre, we're working all around the borough. And we're working with the Turnpike and Lee as well. So we're...
Glad to hear that.
So thank you very much for our investment.
That's great. And thanks to Andy for investing in culture.
Well,
Okay then, before we begin the question and answer session, can I just ask that those asking a question wait for the microphone so we can all hear what you say. Can you introduce yourselves and keep your questions short and to the point, and give Andy time to answer. We'll get through as many questions as we can. Obviously we won't be able to answer them all, but can I just ask that everyone is respectful to each other, please? And anyone who doesn't stick to these common courtesies will be asked to leave the room. So, first question, Ian Dyer.
Okay, thank you, Janet. Can pressure please be put on TransPennine to provide an adequate number of carriages on the Wigan to Manchester route? All too often it's standing room only, which is not acceptable. I say this from personal experience as a volunteer with the LGBT Foundation over at Manchester, and on a weekly commute at least, it's, as I say, it's standing room only, and they need to put certainly additional carriages on. I'm sure they have got them in but they're just too lazy, in my opinion, to put them on.
Definitely, by the number of nods, speaking for the whole place they're in. No, I agree. I mean, since I became mayor, by a massive degree, the number of complaints I get are about transport. You know, go on my Twitter timeline any given morning and have a little look at what's on there. You know, I've got pictures of packed out trains, and people are rightly actually sending me their frustrations because. With a mayor, finally they've got one person they can say, right, can you do something? You know, we've got a really fragmented, unaccountable transport system. The modes of transport, trains, trams, buses, the roads, individually they're not good enough, and they can't integrate because of the kind of way in which they're organised, and we need to do something about it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a Mayor's Transport Board, because even though I don't have direct responsibility over the trains, I am going to bring them into the GMCA building 4 times a year to hold them to account on your behalf. And that issue, I will specifically raise that issue with them, because I know, and anyone who goes on the Bolton line as well will tell you something very similar, the Northern Rail on the Bolton line. It's not good enough. Now, I think TransPennine are putting on new carriages later this year. They're going to increase the size of their trains. I think that also applies to services through Wigan. Obviously, it will be my job to hold them to account that they deliver that on time. And Ian, I can assure you that is exactly what I'll be trying to do. You know, I've been in London today, making the argument about rail investment in the north. You know, we've been treated as second-class citizens when it comes to transport investment for as long as any of us can remember. It's got to change. One way in which we're going to use devolution to change things is that we're calling, together with my colleague Steve Rotherham, the Mayor of Liverpool City Region, we're working with other leaders to convene, we're calling it a Convention of the North, alongside the Great Exhibition of the North in the summer in Newcastle. The point being, the north of England needs to start using its political voice like Scotland's been using its political voice, or like Wales has been using its political voice. You know, start pulling together and holding the government directly to account for the decisions that they're taking, and get what they promised us, which was a northern powerhouse, and I'm still waiting for it.
Okay, thanks, Andy. The next question is from Karina Connor. Is she here? But it's very similar to your answer that you just made, but feel free to make your point, Karina.
I will do. I'll just add on to what Ian said there. So my name's Karina. My question is very similar. It's about transport. So I'm 26 years old. And just like every person for the last 3-4 decades, our transport system hasn't changed. So I've taken a bit of an initiative to measure the delays that I've experienced over the last 4 weeks. So that's been 3 hours and 8 minutes over 4 weeks. So think of the productivity that is for every single person travelling on those rail networks every single day. Yeah. So I'd just like to add that when you go into your transport board, alongside Ian's comment as well.
Absolutely. And I think if you could let me have a copy of that survey, that's exactly the kind of information I need to challenge them. And you're right, we talk about a productivity problem in this country. Well, there you've got it there. You know, we are spending more time in the car, more time stuck on trains, buses, trams, whatever. And actually, in our borough, I remember when we had the debate about the congestion charge, and there was a very good reason why it went down. A lot of people in the Wigan borough are stuck with their car because they can't use public transport. It's not reliable enough or near enough to get them to work. So, you know, they then have no alternative but to go on the roads, and the roads are increasingly congested. So transport is the issue where I think, you know, we've really got to see some change. I wouldn't want to overpromise as ever, but one area where we can get change is on the bus network. So it's not just that our system isn't good enough in terms of them cutting services here, there and everywhere. This is going to stick in your throat, but I'm going to say it anyway. In London, it costs £1.50 per bus journey. £1.50. And that's because they kept a regulated bus system. In the 80s, Margaret Thatcher said, no, everywhere else has to have a deregulated system. And ever since, the operators have been able to charge what they like, go where they like, and it's the system we've got today. You know, a fare here can be £3, £3.50, £4. So it's not just that it's not good enough, we're paying through the nose for it as well, and it's really got to change. And again, we've got the power now to re-regulate our buses. That was part of the devolution deal. And I can assure you I'm going to be using the powers that I've been given to make buses change and work in the public interest rather than the private interest. I wish I could say to you tonight it's all going to happen next year, and it can't, but it is coming. The change is definitely coming on the bus system. I would say it can't come a moment too soon.
I think it's refreshing that we've got someone like Andy fighting our cause at long last, because we've been talking to people, haven't been listening to a word that anyone said, but you're right, it won't happen straight away, but it is happening. Something is changing, isn't it? I think everyone in this room can feel that. And on the subject again of what you were saying about London, Sheila May.
Hi. You mentioned the north-south divide in your introductory comments, and my question's about concessionary travel and the discrepancy between London and Greater Manchester. So my friend is 60 in October, and he lives in London. And he tells me that when he reaches the age of 60, he can get a 60+ London Oyster photo card, which enables him to have free transport in London. So that's the lot: tube, buses, train, tram, the lot. When I went onto the Greater Manchester Transport website, it tells me that I have to wait until my state pension age, which is 66, to get concessionary travel. So I'd like to ask, why are people in London entitled to this free transport at the age of 60, but people in Greater Manchester have to wait until they reach state pension age? Also, who is paying for this benefit in London, which is amounting to several £1,000s per year, I would think? And what are your plans to address this discrepancy?
Yeah. Well, it's a very fair question, and it's back to that point I was making about the north-south divide in transport. There are two reasons why they can do it. The first is that they've had a regulated public transport system, so they've been able to lay down the conditions, and obviously the tube system is publicly run, so that they've got that control over that system, which we don't have, and they've got a regulated bus system. But the second reason is they've always been funded at a much higher level from central government than we have. So they don't just get more capital funding to invest in their infrastructure, they get a revenue subsidy, because it's the capital city, and they need all this to manage all this pressure. So they've always had a higher both capital and revenue support for transport. And I think this is what devolution should be about challenging, because this has gone on for too long. We live in a London-centric country where the decisions are made by people who live there. They live within the M25, and they are and have been prioritising the London area. The truth of the matter is, London are not the only ones, by the way. I think Merseyside offer it as well. Different decisions were taken here. There isn't a budget for me to fund it at the moment. What I will get when we use the powers that we've got through the new Act of Parliament on bus services, so this is a new thing that was passed last year, I obviously get more ability to kind of regulate in the public interest, if you like. Now, you're probably not going to like this bit, but I'm going to say it because otherwise it'd be dishonest. I'm going to prioritise young people, and I'm sorry if that's not what you would want to hear, but I am. So I am committing to a free bus pass for 16 to 18-year-olds. My judgment is, given that I can't fund everything, and given that I'm only getting limited power to kind of extract value for the public through these new powers that I have chosen to prioritise 16 to 18-year-olds. Now, please, by all means, challenge me on that, but it's just my judgment that, if kids aren't leaving school in our borough with hope that they can get to study or to work because they've got the travel costs covered, then I think we all pay the price from that if they become disillusioned about their chances or their prospects. And that's the decision I've made. I just don't have a budget to do anything more. The only thing I have done is found a little bit of money with the support of the 10 leaders, with Peter and others, to help women affected by state pension inequality. So those who were affected by the acceleration of state pension equalisation in 2011, I found whatever I could to give them their bus pass at the date they thought they were retiring, rather than the one that it now is. Now, again, I appreciate that's not what you wanted to hear, but I'm just being honest with you.
Is that coming in soon, Andy, the WASPy bus pass?
We've been running a consultation on it, and it's just closed, so we're just kind of going to assess those replies. But if leaders have minded to stick with the decision, it will be from this April. So it's not like promised far off in the future. It will be from a couple of months' time.
That was one of the questions that was asked.
Yeah, 1 month's time even.
Yeah. So, okay, thanks for that. Okay, Sheila. Okay, we're moving on to health now. Susan Barlow? No? Susan wanted to ask, do you have any plans to further expand mental health services within the region?
Well, yes is the short answer to that. I know we've got Andrew Foster here, Chief Executive of Wrighton, Wigan and Lee, so we do have colleagues from the health service in the room who might want to add to what I'm saying, but I think there's been a recognition at the Greater Manchester level that mental health services haven't been funded at the right level.
Absolutely.
I think it has quite deep roots, to be honest, the kind of treatment of mental health as a poor relation in the system. I think it reflects the fact that, you know, the health service has always prioritised physical health.
Yeah.
And it's only as society has changed in the last couple of decades, as it's become more insecure in terms of people's work and their housing, life has become more precarious for people, that mental health has gone up and up and up the agenda. And I think Greater Manchester's kind of put his hands up and said, actually, we've not been keeping pace with this change. So a new mental health strategy was published last year, and I think I'm right in saying it's around about £140 million extra has been found for mental health, and within that, the priority is children's mental health and young people's mental health, because actually they are the poor relation of the poor relation. You know, that services are really not good enough in many parts of Greater Manchester when it comes to children's mental health. So it's a bit of a kind of, we recognise that things haven't been what they should be. You know, we still have very vulnerable young people being sent hundreds of miles in search of a bed. That's not right. We didn't have an eating disorders service in Greater Manchester until quite recently. We're beginning to put these things right, but it is, you know, catching up with where we really should have been, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a massive issue in the town.
Massive issue.
We've campaigned for it in the paper, but it's the money, and it just doesn't come from anywhere, does it?
No, exactly, Janet. And just to add to it, because this issue, when I was standing to be mayor, came up so much through the younger people we were consulting with. You know, I think it's felt really very, very strongly amongst younger people. And I think that reflects the fact that life has got a bit tougher for younger people in terms of housing and costs of education, tuition fees. But also, and I see this a bit, you know, even with my own kids, schools have become more and more like test and exam factories, and they're not providing that wider support to young people that they once did. And that has left a bit of a gap. So we're going to be working with young people over the coming months to develop something that they've called for, which is a curriculum for life. Can we, at Greater Manchester level, put into schools support with mental health, with financial advice, with you know, stuff around careers, and you know, we're trying to develop a curriculum for life, and we've got the first meeting tomorrow of the Youth Combined Authority, and they're going to be given the specific job of trying to develop this curriculum for life for Greater Manchester, which is about addressing those mental health issues in the early stages. And
will the young people be involved in that? They're going to be.
I'm asking them to design it, you know, develop it really, you know, and this is the way, you know, working with Peter and the other leaders, we want to go. You know, it's very much based actually on the Wigan deal, to be fair. Now, I'd, you know, be interested to, you know, hear what people think about it. But for me as an MP in this borough, I saw a big change a few years ago when Donna and Peter started talking about working with the community as partners rather than sort of dictating, if you like, or passing instructions down. And I think that Wigan deal approach is something that we're embracing at the Greater Manchester level. Don't do two people, work with them, work with communities, work with young people, write our policies together. And I think, you know, it's a big change that I saw in this borough that we're trying to then carry forward to the Greater Manchester level. You know, don't just dump ideas on people. Let the young people design this curriculum for life, because if they do, it's likely to be much more successful.
Yeah. But I think we're all seeing the deal now. It's been recognised across the country. Radio 4 did a big thing last week. It's been in The Guardian nearly every week, it seems to be in, and it's very slowly seems to be getting into people's mindset, so it's the right thing to do.
It is. It's based on the simple idea that the community and voluntary sector are your best assets. You know, they should be equal partners in the whole drive to improve people's lives, and too often the public sector kind of treated them as like, you know, well, you know, suspiciously, they're over there somewhere and they just get a little bit of project funding every now and again. The deal, it seemed to me, was a whole, you know, completely changing that around and saying, no, we start with our communities, we start with our people, we support them, and it's been I think it's been groundbreaking, no doubt about it.
Absolutely. Okay, next question. I think it's fair to say that this is an issue that's perhaps divided the town. There's a suspicion about it, despite Mr Andrews' reassurances. So it'll be interesting to hear what you have to say. John McIntosh? No? Okay.
It sounds like one where the politician will do the old hospital pass, a real hospital pass.
Obviously too cold for John.
Yeah, but I'll do my best to answer.
What can we do to protect the NHS privatisation of the admin, cleaners and porters of Wigan, Lee and Wrightington NHS Trust? And is this the slippery slope to a privatised health service? As I say, Andrew has already said that these people are working for the NHS, just accepting name, but it is fair to say that there's a lot of people who, like I said, are suspicious of it, including the Towns MP, Lisa and Andy.
Well, and I certainly understand those concerns, but actually, to be fair to Andrew and the Trust, they've actually fought privatisation. Certainly in my time as an MP, you know, we were always as one in not wanting that. You know, the hospital here never had a PFI. Tried to keep services in-house, even though they were under pressure at times to put them out. So, you know, obviously Andrew can speak more to the detail of this than me. I think the problem comes with the financial pressure on the NHS, and obviously they're having to look at every which way to kind of eke out extra funding for patient care when funding isn't increasing at the national level. So that, you know, maybe Andrew will want to say more. You know, I think we all kind of recognise that the alternative might be worse, if you know what I mean, and that, you know, you start to see, you know, cuts to frontline services. It's an impossible. I think the government's putting the NHS in an impossible position, to be quite honest with you. I haven't seen all the detail of this, and I would want to look at it myself to reassure myself. I gather there's been talks going on with the unions to take on board their concerns. All I can say to people in this room is, you know, and again, I'm just being honest tonight. I lived through you remember I was in the Blair and then the Brown governments. I was Health Secretary in Gordon Brown's government. I saw this kind of experimentation with privatisation in the NHS, and in the end, I decided it was actually completely the wrong way to go. And as Health Secretary, I said I wanted to see a reversal of it and a return to the public NHS as the preferred provider, and that should be the kind of the position. And it was very much informed actually by Andrew, Peter, and others in the borough and the way we saw things. And I just think that's what it should be. The public NHS should be the default provider. Now, in this case, I understand that it is. It's just a kind of a different way of organising. It's wholly owned by the NHS. But Andrew, maybe you would want to say a little more.
Microphone. Thanks. Yeah, you're absolutely right that the Trust in Wigan has always avoided anything that looks like privatisation. It's avoided PFI, it's avoided outsourcing, it's avoided competitive tendering. But we are under year 8 of austerity, so every year we have to close a financial gap of about 5%. And one of the things that we came across was an example of a trust in the northeast that had gone down this route of setting up a wholly owned subsidiary in order to be better at selling its services. One of the details that sits behind this is that NHS organisations cannot reclaim VAT. So when you compete with the private sector, you're on a 20% disadvantage. And we, believe it or not, are already one of the biggest suppliers of sandwiches to schools, hospitals, care homes across the borough, and that's with the 20% disadvantage. We also do decontamination services, IT services. So what we want to do is set up a company which is wholly owned by the hospital, 100% owned. So it is still an NHS company, which will take away that tax disadvantage so that we can compete for business. And the example in Gateshead, they've gone on to grow their organisation enormously. They've got greater staff satisfaction, and it's been a real success. It's been an award-winning success, and that's what we're trying to do in Wigan.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Next question, Neil Pye.
My question relates to the Town Centre Challenge. How far is that progressing at the moment, the initiative? And also, as well, I think it's a policy initiative. I think it's a very, very good idea, because what we want to see is the growth spread around the city region rather than concentrated in one area. And I think this goes a long way to addressing that concern.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. For those who don't know about it, the Town Centre Challenge was my call out to the boroughs to say, nominate a town that you want me and you want Greater Manchester to focus on, to see if we can really inject some energy into it and help it recover its sense of momentum. It was born out of a couple of things. Firstly, being the MP for Lee for all of those years. I often heard concerns about Lee Town Centre, tried to do things, often found it hard to do things given that the council didn't necessarily have the funding because of the cuts from the government. And I was thinking, well, actually, is there a different way of thinking about this? But it was also partly driven by the response to the spatial framework last year, and people's concerns about the green belt. It got me thinking that actually you should start in our town centres and build more homes there, because actually, that's closer to the infrastructure, the transport, but also, it's where people would accept homes to be built. And actually, if you do build more homes in the town centre, you actually sustain the town centre facilities as a result, the shops, but also maybe you bring in cafes and bars, and you bring people back to the heart of the town. The difficult part of the town centre challenge is it recognises that our towns are not going to be the retail centres that they once were. They're just not, are they? Let's be honest about that. Shopping has moved online, or it's moved to out-of-town retail parks. And so part of this is about saying, look, there's no point clinging on to that retail space and letting all the charity shops, pound shops, fast food shops fill it. It all looks a bit, people get depressed by all of that. It's about saying, look, why don't we shrink the retail core a bit and then open up some of the other space in the town for higher quality residential development. And actually, if you're going to build that kind of higher density development, that'll more likely be affordable to people in their 20s or their 30s, or possibly might be somewhere where people in their 70s or 80s might quite like to live, closer to the facilities that they want to use. So that's the idea behind the Town Centre Challenge. And we've had one meeting so far. We've had nominations all over. Stalybridge, from Lindesborough, Farnworth, the nominated towns, Swinton. And we had a first meeting in Prestwich a couple of weeks ago. And already there's signs that Prestwich is responding to the challenge, and we believe there's some positive development already there. So that's the idea, and we're going to meet in Lee early next month. And I'll be very, very, very keen to see that stimulate some new thinking, because I just think let's breathe new life into these towns. There's a huge degree of pride in our towns, and I think maybe the arrival of a mayor can do something to actually get them moving forward again.
Is there money on the table for this challenge, or is it just the community?
No, there is money on the table potentially. At Greater Manchester level, we were given a loan from the government to develop housing. The way it was constructed originally kind of favoured big companies building the flats in the city centre. So we've let a lot of those loans to those organisations, and people have been asking us why we've been doing that. The reason why we've done that is it's built up a fund now, because as those loans get repaid, we get much greater freedom over how we then deploy the funding that comes back. And it's absolutely that funding that I want to then sort of take out to the outlying towns to say, well, can we now help bridge the gap between developments that might not have been viable before? One thing you may not realise is, the arrival of a mayor in Greater Manchester does create new powers that can add to what the council's doing. So I get the power to set up a mayoral development corporation, which can bring certain benefits to companies who are within it. I get the possibility of using compulsory purchase powers, so I can help clear sites for development that other developers might have found hard to do. So there's things I can do to add value to what the council are trying to do, and that lies behind the town centre challenge.
Excellent. Okay. The next question, I think it's probably one of the big issues across the country as well as Wigan, Greater Manchester, and I know you're passionate about it. John Hassall? No?
So homelessness in the town has increased sixfold since 2010. What would you be doing to combat the growing problem, bearing in mind there are 400 empty council homes in Wigan alone?
It's a personal priority of mine. So I think what you have to do is have a policy to deal with the immediate crisis, which is right before our eyes, in terms of giving people respite from particularly nights like tonight and putting a roof over their head, any roof to begin with. It's got to be safe, of course, but somewhere to go. And then alongside that, develop longer term strategies for people to get stability again and start to rebuild their life. So on both of those things, we've just signed off our rough sleeping and homelessness strategy. And as I was saying to Janet before, it's been developed with the charities that have been out there, the BRIC included. We've been working with homelessness organisations right across Greater Manchester to develop this. So we have a plan now around developing bed space to end rough sleeping by 2020. It's a massive challenge, I'll be honest. I've made a big commitment, if you like. But I just think, in this day and age, are we really saying that we can't afford to put a roof over every head, that it's acceptable for people to be on the streets? I was really affected by the death of Chris Conlon in Lee. And Chris is somebody who I knew because I'd seen him around Lee for years, and then his mum died and he became homeless. And it's often something like that, Janet, that does it. It's like a traumatic event in somebody's life that can kind of then kickstart the downward thing where they end up in the streets. And when he died before Christmas last year, really, I found it heartbreaking, to be honest, because I used to see him outside Lee Tesco all the time. And the council's done a lot to help him. He'd had a lot of support, but still, it shouldn't be happening, should it? So for me, it's about having capacity in every community where people have somewhere to go. I think I'm right in saying, Peter O'Donnell can correct me here if I'm wrong, but in the borough, a new accommodation centre has been opened in Wigan and Lee later this year, so that we've got, I think, 15 beds, I think, in each. It's roughly about that, to supplement what's already there. That will make a big contribution, I would say, to the levels of rough sleeping in the borough. So we've got to do that all over Greater Manchester. But believe me, I'm going to be doing everything I can. I am giving, I don't expect any great praise for it, but I'm giving 15% of my own salary to the Mayor's Homelessness Fund on a monthly basis. For as long as you elect me as Mayor, I will do that. We've raised over £100,000 already. Yes, Andy. Yeah, well, we have. We've raised a lot of money, and we'll carry on doing it. And thank you for that. But it's not, I'm not expecting any great praise for it. The only thing I'm doing is I'm trying to kind of say that this is about everyone. Me being able to look other people in the eye in Greater Manchester and say, look, I'm trying to do something. Can everybody do something as well? Because I think it is about that. Politics going forward can't just be about everybody berating the council, or everyone berating the government, or everyone berating the police, or whoever it might be. We've all got to step forward. These are tough times, and we've got to come up with better ways of supporting people. What all about.
What kind of things can we do in this room? What we've seen.
Well, you are, aren't you? In the BRIC are brilliant, aren't they? And they're doing so much. And Fir Clement was mentioned before. They're fantastic as well, because they're putting food in people's bellies when they might not be able to afford to feed themselves. So there's, this borough is, I just love the way people do respond here. But we need more of it, is the honest answer, because of the way things are. The other thing I would say is, looking at then going beyond the immediate problem, is housing first. Now, I think I'm right in saying there is a housing first scheme being developed in the borough. This is where some of those properties that you mentioned are given to people, and then because they've had the worry of the property taken away and their night stay, they can then really focus on the addiction side of things or the mental health side of things, and then really begin to sort of focus on themselves and get their life turned around. So housing first is going to be our longer term approach to tackling homelessness in Greater Manchester. And we've just signed an agreement with the 15 big housing providers, the social landlords, that will make available by the end of this year around 400 to 500 housing first places in Greater Manchester. Now, this is beginning to put a bit of a dent in the problem, but as we sit here tonight, all of that provision is not yet in place, and it's not yet good enough. So I'll hold my hands up and say the problem's getting worse, our response is getting better, but it's not yet good enough. And that's the best answer I can give you.
We've seen pictures of you out on the streets in Manchester at night talking to these people. Have you been surprised at how they've ended up where they have, or has it been an eye-opener to you what's happened to them?
Yeah, very much so. The age of people surprises me, the number of young women in the city centre. I do go out regularly at 6 in the morning because I want to be sure that if I see that there are people who are there, you know, not there because they're drawn into the city in the daytime and they're not there in the evening. These, you know, I want to get the true picture. But yeah, it's sadly people with stories like Chris Coleman, I'm afraid. You know, it's people who've had a traumatic event in their life, a bereavement, a relationship breakdown. Sadly now, the single biggest cause of homelessness in Greater Manchester is eviction from private rented accommodation. And that is an issue that I think Parliament has completely neglected. Private landlords are still free to they can evict people at the drop of a hat. And, you know, that's not right. But so yeah, it really troubles me. Care leavers, people who were in the forces. I've had people who were released from Strangeways straight to the street. Young LGBT people, the real range. And in every case, it's not that these people, you know, it's not people will generalise. Oh, they're all this, they're all beggars, or they're not. You know, often they are people who are struggling with a catastrophic event in their life, and they end up in the doorways. And I just think we should be doing more to help.
I think that the bricks helped us channel that in this town, because people walk past the people on the streets, they want to help but they don't know what to do, whereas with the bricks helping us.
I'm really proud. The brick got a grant from the Mayor's Homelessness Fund. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was a bit of money, and I was really proud to be able to present that. They're brilliant. You know, I know. You know, the council staff do sleep outs with, you know, everyone, and I've seen Wigan Athletic been doing stuff to support them recently. So yeah, brilliant. And then in Lee, Compassion in Action, they're doing great work as well. It's great to see.
It's not easy though, is it?
One of the first persons to set up a social working agency, working with the private landlords to help people to access private rented accommodation. So there is a lot of work going in Wigan Council to help people to access private rented, people who are homeless or in housing needs. So I think Wigan Council should be supportive for that and use that. There's a lot of private rented properties out there that we can utilise more. So, and there are private landlords that do want to assist people in housing need. I think the welfare benefit reform worked against them with the eviction, not just private landlords.
You're right, they do deserve credit for that. And I think this is a massive issue. And I felt this as MP for Lee a lot, because I used to have landlords that had properties that were causing real problems. And you'd write letters to them on House of Commons paper, you just get no reply at all. And I became increasingly frustrated about private landlords. And I think it's called Housing Options, I think it is called. It was partly that shaped some of my thinking around what we need to do at the GM level. I want a GM good landlord scheme. So the good private landlords, and they do exist, should sign up to it, because then it will say this is how you treat people, this is what you do with rents and, you know, fair processes and upkeep of the property. And then we'll be clear about who isn't prepared to sign up to it. And then we'll empower residents with information. And it's really good actually. Tomorrow in Greater Manchester at the Mechanics Institute, we're launching the Renters Forum. So we're kind of giving a voice now to private rented tenants that they've never really had, to be honest. And that is another good development. The other thing I'm interested in, and this is only an idea, I'll just chuck it out there tonight, I'm wondering whether we could use some of the housing funding I was mentioning to Janet before to have an amnesty across Greater Manchester. So any private landlords who want to kind of say, look, I don't want to do it anymore, I'd rather put my property, we know you're going to get tougher with us around the standards and the upkeep of the property, so we're actually out and we'll sell you our property, and then we could help get a loan together for a private, it's not private, a social landlord who then can take it on and bring it more into the socially rented stock. So there's a lot of thinking going on around the private rented sector. It is, just think about this. In our borough, and I think it's true across Greater Manchester, around 40% of the homes in the private rented sector are beneath the decent home standard. It might be higher in our borough, but I think as you get particularly towards the city centre, there's some terrible examples. And if you think about it in the context of Grenfell and everything there, in terms of health and safety standards, and it is utterly shocking that these people are raking in the housing benefit, not putting it back into the upkeep of their properties, putting their own tenants risk and dragging down whole communities. It's got to stop, I think.
And do you think... sorry.
People know are optimal showing the private renters rather than the social rented when they do things around marriage. They do like private rented, standard accommodation, carpets, fitted kitchens and that.
Yeah.
Private landlords in the open market should have got to attract those with tenancy, so we've got to bring the properties over.
Yeah. The GM Good Landlord scheme is about that, though. It's about giving a clear kind of kite mark, if you like, and then we'll know the 1 in 3 who are not prepared to sign up to it, and then you go after them with various means, I think, that are available to us, and that hopefully can lift standards across the whole sector.
Yeah, you're right. There are a lot of good landlords in Wigan, but there are some bad ones, and it's those who drag down the rest. We get so many phone calls in the paper about it. There's nothing we can do. The council can't act because they're private, and you feel a bit desperate, really, because these poor people suffering. The landlords don't listen to you. They don't give a damn, do they?
No,
so.
Some of them don't. No.
Sorry, can I just raise a point?
Yeah, do.
With regards to landlords, my father owns numerous properties. It's not necessarily the landlords that make the issues. Sometimes it's housing benefit, with regards to backlogs or it not being paid due to a change in circumstances. My father earns a living from renovating properties to a very good standard, rents them out. Don't forget, this is a living for some people. In that circumstance, if housing benefit isn't being paid, a person who is generating an income from that to support their own families and their own investment, they have to look at it on a realistic perspective.
Yeah.
So some of the blame just has to be put down to local authorities who pay the housing benefit that people are entitled to, but it's not necessarily getting through the system.
Well, I think the thing I would say to that is, responsible landlords, like your dad sounds, we want more. We want them to take over more and do more. And obviously we'd want to deal with those issues that you describe around, late payment and those kind of issues. But I think they get a bad name from the ones who really don't play by the rules at all. And I think it's about, lifting the whole reputation, if you like, of the private rented sector. So, I want to use what power we've got to buy out the bad ones and help the good ones expand. Because, there are a lot of people in Greater Manchester who are living in unsafe accommodation, actually. And the landlords don't even live anywhere near those communities. They just kind of rake in the money, and it just cannot be right, can it? That cannot be right. And we've got to Parliament's not going to legislate on this for a number of years, and we're going to have to come up with a voluntary approach in Greater Manchester that starts to deal with it.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
Oh, I don't mind.
Sorry.
Yeah. Can I just pick up on the question around the backlog on housing benefits? I work for the council. My name's Alison Mackenzie-Folan. We're working really hard in terms of housing benefit claims, so if you want to come and pick up individually, but we have now, we haven't got any backlogs. We're the fastest in terms of processing times across Greater Manchester. We've got an online form, and we support residents to get online to be able to do it really quickly and really fast, so we're trying to turn them around. We know it's important to turn those claims around really fast, so if there are particular issues, we will pick them up, but there shouldn't be any backlogs, and we're really working hard to do something about it. Occasionally what happens is sometimes people don't give the right evidence, but we do work with those people to say, this is particular evidence that you need for that claim, so we try and support those people to get the right evidence to put together, and we know it's a really important issue, and we're on top of it.
Just responding to that, it was more around, the issue is more surrounded for the universal credit system. It's what my father's found. If you are claiming job seekers allowance or income support, if you have to leave work due to an injury or something, this is completely common on a national scale. You have to claim what is now coming into the system on a national basis is, especially around here, universal credit.
Yeah.
I've got no personal experience of it, but having listened to some of the stories from some of the tenants, it really makes lives difficult for not just the landlords can deal with it to some perspective, but with regards to the tenants, they can't even feed themselves because they're worried about the rent and paying the electricity and keeping a roof over the families' heads. So it's not just based at housing benefit, it's a universal credit system that is failing and in turn has a long-term damaging effect to the wider community and the landlords that are trying to provide suitable housing.
Well, you make a really good point, and actually I remember discussing this with Peter at the time. Wigan put itself forward to be a pilot for universal credit, and the reason it did it was to say, well, you know, let's get the evidence, because we have our concerns about it, but if we do that, then we'll be in a better position to pick up those issues. And you're absolutely right. I think from the Wigan pilot, the number of tenants who were left in housing arrears through universal credit just it shot up massively. We were talking about 80% of residents had some form of arrears because of the delays in payment. Really outrageous thing is the government's just ignored all the evidence from the pilots and it's ploughing on regardless. They've made a few minor changes. But we're talking about rough sleeping and homelessness. For every one person we might get off the streets in Greater Manchester through what we're doing, universal credit could put two more on. And you know, that is the reality, I'm afraid. You know, it's so frustrating that having set up pilots in places like this, they get clear evidence and they just say, oh well, we're still just doing it anyway. And that's seemingly the nature of the times that we're living through at the moment. But you're absolutely right to raise your concern. And all of Greater Manchester progressively is going 100% universal credit this year. It could cause absolute... You think we've got a problem with rough sleeping now, you just look at it later this year, it could be even worse.
I think we can all sense Andy's frustration on that thing. Is that it now for that? Okay. Chris Dainty, is it?
There's one at the back.
Yeah. Oh, you want... Okay.
Sorry, you just mentioned, is there any other questions on the housing market? Isn't the case, Andy, that we've got a broken housing market?
Yeah.
From the top to the bottom? We've got people who are holding on to land, controlling supply and demand, pushing up the prices of houses. There's not enough houses for people to buy, let alone rent, socially or any otherwise. We've seen a rapid expansion of private landlords. We've seen subsidies given to housing associations, and we've seen councils almost finding it virtually impossible to build their own social housing. I think the housing market's broke, Andy. Everybody knows it, and the government needs to put it right.
Well, I really agree with you. And actually, I think this goes back to the 80s, doesn't it, and right to buy. There's been an obsession in Westminster with owner occupation, over and above anything else, you know, just promote owner occupation. And it's left a real shortage of affordable and social housing in large parts of the country. And you're right, it's led to a broken housing market, and we've been discussing some of the symptoms of that broken market tonight. The answer is to, well, part of it hopefully maybe is the town centre idea, you know, work with landlords to build more affordable homes in our brownfield land in areas that are currently vacant. That's part of the answer, I think, Terry, but it's a really difficult thing. We can't solve it overnight. But you know, this housing crisis wasn't created in Wigan, it was created in Westminster.
As so many of our problems were, I think.
Sorry?
As so many of our problems were, I think.
A bit of a theme here. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, sorry for that.
You mentioned before as well, in terms of what we can build in affordable properties, a focus on smaller properties as well, because certainly with the rental sector and with housing benefit being mentioned, the bedroom tax is one of the big causes of those arrears happening in the first place. So one of the ways we can get around that is making sure that we've got the smaller properties as well, the one bedroom, the two bedroom, that maybe fit more modern family models rather than the sort of 2.4 children model that people used to have, so that families don't get in that trap in the first place.
I think that's a really good point, Will. The housing providers say that to me, that there's a real shortage of one bed flat, you know, single person flat accommodation all over Greater Manchester. So therefore when they're trying to work with rough sleepers, they have a limited number of options for places that they can put them. I think the truth is we need more of that type of accommodation, probably in all 10 Greater Manchester boroughs. And yeah, it's a really fair point. On the bedroom tax, I think it's going to be a case of having to think of more inventive ways of helping people hit by the bedroom tax or universal credit. All of the credit unions of Greater Manchester have come to me saying that they're prepared to work together to see if there's a way we could, if the GMCA could give them some guarantees, whether we could develop our own loan scheme to help people with those arrears and those delays. So we're looking at all of those things, but it's not a good picture, and yet part of the answer is building more accommodation of the size that you mentioned.
Okay, all right on that subject now. So, Chris Datey, is he in the room? No, he's not even here after all that. Okay, he wanted to know, you probably get some help answering this question, Andy. With all the cuts to local councils, Wigan is having to save over £100 million. Do councils waste money, and should they be accountable for how and the way they spend our money?
Well, I think they are, aren't they? You know, they're accountable
Absolutely.
At the ballot box every year. And I think if you look at the scale of what they've had to deal with in the last 7 or 8 years, it is monumental, actually. I think the figure for all of Greater Manchester in terms of the cumulative scale of the cuts, it's about £250 million has been taken out of council direct grant from the government. That's an enormous amount of money. If I've got that wrong, you know, it's more, is it?
We've lost 130, I'm sure.
Well, it's a lot more. I saw a figure around today that must be more in recent years. That's well, if you go back to 7 years, yeah, you'd be a much higher figure. So if you think about the scale of what they're facing, and the way they've had to kind of rethink, and we mentioned the deal earlier, they have become more creative actually in extracting value. I think we all could probably point to something where we say, oh, why have we funded it? Yeah, but that's just, you know, that happens in any organisation. I remember this going through, that Peter might want to come in at this point and say something, but I remember Wigan and Peter adopting a really forward thing. You saw what was coming, didn't you? And the council got ahead of some of this and made some efficiencies very early on in this austerity process, so that it got ahead of the problem that was coming. And, you know, it is worth saying that, I don't know for how many years now, I think it's about 4 or 5, they've frozen council tax, which is a pretty massive achievement given the cuts that you're facing, and they've broadly kept services and the show on the road. So yeah, I'm making no apologies for it. I'm going to praise the council. I'm a resident of the borough as well. I think they've done a good job, but I think the tipping point's coming. I don't think they can carry on doing this. You know, it's a tough thing to be asked them to do for 7, 8, 9 years in a row, and I think, you know, they've done a great job, but, you know, there's going to come a limit at some point.
Can I say something on that? I work for... I'm sorry.
I do.
I work for Wigan Council, and I'm quite proud to say that I do. And yeah, we have had a difficult time, I think it's fair to say. But the councils work very hard to keep services going and to utilise other things, like you say, with the deal in the communities. Yeah. And I think we've done a really good job. I work for Children's Social Care, and as you can imagine, we're always very busy, but we're very committed and dedicated, and I think that really helps. I think Wigan was voted the best council to work for by the employees, which says a lot, I think, for Wigan, so I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. No, I think I'm really glad you did, and it's yeah, that's really appreciated. I'm sure that you said that.
Okay, just another couple of questions.
There's one.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Could I just say that I do think that Wigan Council do a good job, but I think that I would be prepared to pay more money for better services, because I think in a few ways we're lacking, particularly in police and the state of the town, the tidiness. I think it's particularly the street cleansing is not good.
I don't think you're on your own.
That's my view.
I don't think you're on your own with that view, but for some people they don't have the option to pay more, do they? They can't afford to pay more.
It's difficult. I'll take the police one, and then Peter did the cleansing one. Just, you probably don't know this yet. We're going to have kept their bit of the council tax frozen, but I'm afraid from my bit, I'll be honest with you, it's not frozen. So we're asking you to pay £12 more for policing per household in the coming year. Yeah, well, it's the limit. We couldn't. It's the limit of what we've been able to do, but we're doing it. For the average the house in Wigan, which is a Band B property, you're looking at about £9 to £10 a year. What I've said to the police in return is, and Ian Pilling might want to, who's Deputy Chief, but also Wigan from in origin. I've said to Ian, and Ian Hopkins, the Chief Constable, we want more police officers, so they're going to recruit 100 more. Okay, it's not what we've lost, but it is more. They've agreed that they'll protect the police community support officers in their numbers with the money that we're given. And I've also said I want to see improvements to the 101 number. I don't think at the moment it's a good enough in any way service to the public, and I think it does need to be improved, and there's a plan being developed to introduce some improvements. So, you know, I'm making your wish come true. I'm going to be charging you more for better police. Peter.
Yeah, part of our deal with Wigan deal is, of course, we will freeze council tax. And the reason for that is very simple, is that not just the council, but Wigan people are suffering as well during austerity. So we felt it was an obligation that we had. And the thing is that, you know, people in this room may want to do that, but the council tax is the most regressive tax we have. And the bottom 10% of the population pay about 8% of their income in council tax. The top 10% pay only 2%. Although they live in all the big houses, because they earn a lot of money, so we're actually charging the poorest people. That's why we've had this ambition to keep down. So the deal, I mean, in a sense, our street services are rated in the top quartile of all services. And I think if you want to travel to other towns, you'll see actually a lot more listed. But really what we want to do with the deal is actually, the deal, by picking up litter from the streets, why is it there in the first place? Because some people are just too lazy to use a bin just round the corner. So we want to encourage people to do their bit for the town, not throw the litter down. And that's what it's all about. Not expecting the council simply to do all the things that people, but actually getting people to think for themselves. Going back to the time when communities were stronger and people did things collectively for themselves. So all across Wigan, people in communities have organised litter picks in their local area to make it look better. A lot of my colleagues do that. We're doing a big spring clean coming up soon. So all that thing is to actually try and encourage people to keep the streets in the way we'd all like them to be kept. But we've kept our part, and it's right, 5 years now we've frozen council tax for Wigan services. The bit we haven't frozen is the social care stuff. And that's because the government, as with the police, haven't given Andy any more money to pay for the police. They've not given us any more money to pay for the increased number of people who need social care. So it's gone up, we think our costs next year, gone up around about 5 million, and we can raise council by this, called a 3% social care precept, which brings in just over 3 million. So there's still a gap that we've got to resolve, but thanks to the real hard work we have across Wigan and actually applying those deal principles, early intervention, prevention, don't wait till things get too problematic and too expensive, but deal with them early, we've managed to save money. So actually, Andy, our prognosis over the next couple of years is we'll survive. You know, because we've taken these decisions, because of the great support we have in the community, we'll keep it going.
Good.
I thought he was going to start singing then.
I'd pay to see Peter as Gloria Gaynor on live this day.
Okay, any more questions on that subject? Sorry.
Oh, Andy, my question's about the mayoral precept.
Yeah.
Can you explain it to us and, more to the point, justify it, please?
And just what, sorry? Justify.
It.
Yeah. I'm glad you've raised it, because I wouldn't want to go off this conversation without raising it. So, in addition to the precept for the police, you will also see in your council tax something called mayoral general precept, including fire. And what that will be is we're freezing the budget for the fire service, if that's not a contradiction in terms. But on top of what we used to pay last year for the fire service, you will have an £8 extra charge, which is effectively what's called a mayoral precept. Now, you will say, hang on a minute, you know, why are we paying for you and, you know, for your job and everything, which would be a very fair question. So let me justify it to you. That £8, by the way, will mean about a £6 charge per year for the average household in the borough. What will it pay for? Well, I mean, Will Patton's here tonight. You know, we were both on the mayoral hustings last year. You know, the call on me was improve the bus services, you know, re-regulate the buses, protect the green belt and rewrite the spatial framework, do something about homelessness. All of these things were the things I committed to in the manifesto, and obviously I can't do some of those things without a budget to put them in place. You know, so we are cracking on with, as I said to the lady before, you know, we are cracking on with reforming the way buses work, and that is what part of the mayoral precept will help fund. We are rewriting the spatial framework, and that process has cost a bit of money, but people were saying to me they wanted you know, efforts to protect more of the green belt, and so that is underway. The town centre challenge is also part of what I'm doing. I want, you know, the powers I mentioned before around mayoral development corporations, CPO. I obviously need funding to be able to put those into effect. So I want you to know that extra mayoral precept is not just going to fund, you know, administration. This is about doing the things that the public asked me to do when I stood for election.
Can I just ask a supplementary question to that? Perhaps it's just me that I don't understand how it works, but surely via devolution you've got a budget for the things you're trying to achieve.
No is the answer, I'm afraid. I mean, it's a bit similar to what Peter was just saying. You know, we'll give you the power to do it, but it's over to you if you want to raise more money for the police or you want to raise money. You know, that's basically the way this was done. And so with buses, for instance, you know, there is an extra cost on Transport for Greater Manchester. It wasn't funded nationally. It's a local decision, and they're saying if you want to do it, you're going to have to fund it. So I'm finding kind of ways in the budget that I've got to do that. Similarly, on the Great Manchester Spatial Framework, that was my decision to refocus it. There was a cost, and so therefore, you know, there isn't money to pay for that, and that's what it's for. I originally proposed a precept of £9, and I, you know, worked with Peter and other leaders to see if we can chip it down, and it's now £8. So we really have tried to get it right down. But the only last point I would say is we've got this devolution deal. We've got more than anywhere else in the country. We've got all the national negativity around Brexit and everything that's going on down in Westminster. This is a chance for Greater Manchester to put our foot down a bit and break out ahead of the others, and, you know, keep ahead of our rivals. And to be honest, I'm really determined that we don't waste this opportunity. We do need to act on some of these things that I've spoken about, and that's what the precept will be used for.
Hi Andy, my name's Stephen Shaw from the RMT Union, and it's quite interesting to listen there about your manifesto commitments around the buses in the region. Taking the question back to one of the original questions that was in around manifesto commitments, as you'll be aware, we're taking our 15th day of strike action last week. I'm an employed guard for Arriva Rail North, and the rail services within this region, under the Rail North committee that's been set up, you are looking to introduce additional services with new rolling stock coming in, but it's going to be at the expense of safety critical guards on board. As we know, Merseytravel are getting rid of 200 on their local authority within Merseyrail, and they're looking at changing the role for us on the Arriva Rail North when the new rolling stock arrives next year. Now, what's concerning me is, and I've came here tonight to reach out for a bit of support within this dispute from my Metro Mayor, is what's really worrying me is you seem to be remaining tight-lipped around this dispute that we're in. We've got Steve Rotherham on Merseyrail, your counterpart there over in Merseyrail, who we've met with numerous times, who is actually supporting the removal of guards. But we've got yourself, who have never heard any assurances or commitments around this dispute. Now, this is despite the Labour manifesto, with a clear manifesto commitment in there, saying that they will not support any extension of driver-only operation, and that's nationally. And we're currently in dispute with 5 different companies around it. We've also got your shadow transport minister, Andy MacDonald, repeatedly quoting in Parliament that he does not support the removal of guards, and he will not support any extension of driver only. So my question to you is, why are the senior Labour figures not coming out in the party supporting this dispute that we're in? We've had motions tabled at Wigan Council that have been ruled out for whatever reason. That the reason I was given that the motion was ruled out, that they believed there'd be legal sort of implications about supporting the motion, and it was ruled out. So I'd like to know your position on this dispute and whether you're supporting the guards.
Well, I'm in a different position to Steve, you know, because obviously I don't have that responsibility that he's got through Mersey travel. So I don't have a direct kind of say in this thing. So it's not necessarily something I can influence, if you like, in that I don't have that level of control. What I would say is, obviously safety, which is the concern that's being raised, isn't it? You know, I'm told in Merseyrail, that there aren't going to be 200 redundancies. The people aren't going to be made redundant. There's going to be jobs. That's what I've been told. Now, you correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I've been led to believe. You know, the issue is about safety, isn't it? And I think you're saying it's not safe to have driver operated only, and the train operators and the authorities are saying it is. I'm not in a position, I'm not in a position to say I know who's right and who's wrong in that particular argument. There are driver-only operated trains in other parts of the country, and you know, if they were unsafe, it would seem to me that wouldn't be allowed. So if it's not about jobs and it is genuinely an issue about safety, I would say get both sides around the table and thrash this one out, you know, and present the evidence as to whether it's safe, unsafe. I just think, you know, it feels to me a bit of a polarised debate at the moment, and you know, obviously that's not necessarily great for the travelling public. So maybe that's not the answer you want to hear. But on this one, I wouldn't necessarily just go straight away and say, oh, we must just, you know, say we have all guards kept on trains. If it operates elsewhere in the country, you know, why would we say that it's not good enough? You know, not good enough here.
That's the manifesto commitment for the party. As a member of the Labour Party as well, surely Labour MPs and Labour councillors uphold the policy of the party. That's the policy. The shadow transport ministers come out repeating it time and time again, yet we're getting yourselves and other councillors and MPs who won't come out and support it.
Well, I mean, all I've tried to say to you is I don't have a direct thing in this. In many ways, you've not heard a view because I've not necessarily got a stake in this particular thing directly. The thing is, through devolution, though, it's not a case of just signing up to every single thing in the manifesto. They didn't consult me necessarily about the manifesto. I agreed with a lot of it. I didn't necessarily agree with all of it. There was a lot I would have wanted to see in the manifesto that wasn't in, for instance, on social care. So, you know, I'm a Labour mayor, but I'm not necessarily. Devolution means we have to take views that are right for us, not just necessarily go with one view that's the view nationally. That's the whole point of devolution. And I'll be prepared to sit down with you and your colleagues and talk this through, and have that meeting that you've had with Steve. But I don't want to kind of give you a kind of feeling tonight that it's a case of just saying, oh yeah, we defend every guard on every train. If they operate elsewhere differently, I don't, and particularly with new trains coming into service, as I said, I don't see why we should close our minds to the chance that they could work here.
Okay, one more question.
John Fox, Bakers Food and Allied Workers Union. If it weren't for those guards, a lot of disabled people wouldn't be able to get on them trains. And for them to get about on them trains, they need them guards on, and that's a part of what the guard does. It's the help and safeguarding of people on those trains. Now, I totally agree with me, the RMT guy, and I've got to say, we give them full support on the union. We do not think they should have driver-only operated trains. So, to me, we do think you should get involved in this, Andy, and support these guys.
Well, I think Andy said it.
I'll have the meeting. I will have the meeting, and let me say to you, if people brought evidence to me to say that the access for disabled passengers was to get worse, then I wouldn't support it. Simple as that.
We'll have the meeting.
Okay.
I'll send you an email, we'll have the meeting.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm committing to that. I'm not going to support anything that makes disability access worse. I don't believe that to be the case, because the trains are different. They're not like the ones that, that's the whole point. New trains are coming into service. But we'll have the meeting and let's have that discussion.
Andy, I'm sorry I'm looking at
It's all right.
it's a pity John Hilton's not in it. Oh, thank you. Sorry, I just thought you can all hear me anyway. It's a pity John Hilton's not here tonight, because, and to answer that gentleman's question, I have supported you, I've signed your petitions, and I actually fired a letter back to Northern Rail saying I was 100% behind this strike and what you're fighting for. But I believe that when you say there are one-man, driver-only trains, I've been told by John Hilton, who worked on the railways for 48 years, that they're actually goods trains, those.
No,
now, I don't know whether that's true. I'm only telling you what I've heard.
What nonsense, Larry.
Is it?
I'm a guard on the railway, I've been for 25 years. We don't operate any goods trains.
Right, shall we leave this subject and let's have a meeting with Andy?
I think let's have the meeting and then we can talk it through.
It's a new question.
Okay.
Hello, Fiona Smith. I live in Hindley Green. The UK has made commitments to address our responsibilities in respect of climate change. It's an amazing opportunity, especially for regions which have an engineering skills base. How does your vision for Greater Manchester respond to that challenge?
Well, that's a massive question, isn't it? And the answer to it is, I'm going to be asking all of you. So true to the thing that we were saying earlier about doing this with people and developing policies with people, we're holding a Green Summit on the 21st of March. So it'll be at Manchester Central. It's open, everyone's been able to apply. And the idea is to get people together to debate our ambitions. We currently have a plan in Greater Manchester of carbon neutrality by 2050. But what I'm told is that isn't quick enough. If you want to stop temperature rising in the rest of this century, you have to act more quickly than that. We saw Copenhagen, I think, set a date of 2025. Now, I think that is way ahead of, they are massively ahead of us. But the issue is, can we accelerate our ambition? And the point of the summit is to pose that question and to then consider what might need to be done to make it happen. So it would mean about us investing in renewable energy schemes in all of our boroughs, actually, all over Greater Manchester, which, to be honest, could probably bring down energy bills for people. It would mean retrofitting homes. It would mean going, let's say, on the buses to all-electric buses. It could mean that. I'm not saying it will mean, but it could mean that. It would definitely mean investing in our cycling infrastructure to encourage people to shift to walking and cycling. So we're going to have the summit, and I would like to see actually business play its part. So this whole drive around plastic needs to kind of go up a few gears in Greater Manchester, doesn't it? We need to see businesses making commitments about what they're going to do to reduce their use of plastic. So this is the summit, and so look out for it, get involved in it. It's a big opportunity. It's the right thing to do. But I'll just finish on this point. It's also a big economic benefit, because if we go early on carbon neutrality ahead of the rest of the UK, which is, well, I want Greater Manchester to always be leading. The truth is all areas, all businesses in the end will have to become low carbon. So we will get benefits from having been the first, because we'll have been we'll have got the early adopters. I had a meeting in Greater Manchester headquarters yesterday around a scheme to retrofit homes, to put the insulation in them and probably give them renewable energy. And they were saying you'd need a massive scheme with the colleges to train young people to develop a retrofitting scheme that could go Greater Manchester wide. But I would say, well, why wouldn't we do that? Because those young people then will have skills that they could take all over the country, given that everywhere is going to have to do the same eventually. So it's the right thing to do, but it also could be massively in our own economic interest to do it as well. And hopefully the Green Summit will set new ambitions.
Okay.
Do you want to? Sorry, you wanted to come on.
You mentioned to say business should help with this kind of thing. Do you not think that businesses have a lot to do with Brexit, as well as trying to then make them green as well? I think we've got a hell of a lot on our plates at the moment for businesses in the borough and in the area and in the country.
Yeah, I do. They've got a lot to contend with, like councils, like everybody. Everyone's contending with a lot of stuff, aren't they, right now? But actually, I don't think you see it always as a burden. If you switch your energy to green, clean suppliers, you can actually bring your energy bills down. And if you reduce use of packaging or plastic materials, again, it can be good for cost. I just think the debate's changing on plastic, isn't it? You don't see this? I kind of feel it is anyway. I think there's
We are, and I work for a very green company who have actually gone out and we're doing things with the seas, because obviously there's a big thing with yarn in the sea, and we've done work with people for that. So I am involved a hell of a lot with a company who is very much...
Which company is that?
Kind of things. Sorry?
Which is your company?
Milliken Industrial Limited.
Okay.
So we do a hell of a lot of environmental things, and we try and do everything we can, but obviously businesses are now facing quite a huge thing with Brexit on the horizon, and how their businesses may change over the next 2-3 years.
I don't disagree. I'm talking about a voluntary thing, not legislative. But also, I'd just say two things very quickly. It won't work unless businesses can see it's also in their financial interest to do it. I think if you come up with the right measures, it could actually help businesses save money. So that's one thing. But the second thing is, I think customers will increasingly say, I want businesses that are doing the most on this agenda. So it's going to be you've got to make it a pro-business agenda as well, and if you can, then that's when you can make real progress. But again, the summit is there to debate these things.
I do think more needs to be done though on businesses with Brexit.
Well, I agree with that, definitely. we've escaped the B word so far tonight.
We've done really well.
You haven't answered my question.
Well, what question? So I want to answer your question. So what was
my question was, have you done any impact assessments on the businesses that are in the Greater Manchester area, and how Brexit is going to impact them versus if we go out on World Trade Organisation rules versus single market membership, and what the implications are for the businesses in the area?
Yes, we have, not sort of on individual businesses, but overall, the current prediction we've been given, and this assumes, I think, a softer type of Brexit, we were predicting 2.5% growth for the next decade in Greater Manchester, when we were thinking we were staying in, and it's now 1.5%. So, but that's an assumption that it won't be a kind of, big break Brexit, if I can put it that way.
But all the discussion is about a customs union. Labour keep talking about a customs union, and Conservatives are doing completely different. But that doesn't benefit our service industries, because the customs union is nothing to do with service industries. That's only to do with goods transfer.
Yeah. Well, I think generally we need to have a pragmatic approach to this. In Greater Manchester, 58% of our exports go to the European Union, and it's 44% nationally. So we have to be mindful of that, because I'm worried that with all this rhetoric coming out of Westminster, and the government particularly, all this kind of push for a hard Brexit, it could be really hard for us if that's what happens. Because if you go out on world trade rules, then we are going to be hit very, very hard indeed. So I think what you heard yesterday, I would say, is a sensible move by the Labour Party. To have some form of customs union with the European Union has got to be in Greater Manchester's interest. The only rider I would put on it is, you also, though, have to do that and respond to the concerns that the Wigan and Leigh public expressed around freedom of movement. So you have to do a deal with Europe that keeps that arrangement, whilst also recognising that there needs to be change to the way free movement and the immigration rules work. But I think that is perfectly possible if you're having a more constructive debate with Europe about that.
But a customs union is only for goods.
Yeah, no, sure, no, I accept that. But goods are important.
I think we could,
important, but
yeah.
services equally.
I think we could still be here in a week discussing Brexit.
We could probably.
Okay, so we're out of time now, so one more question?
Yeah, there's a couple. I'll take what. I know we're pushing for time, but whatever's the few hands that are up now, I'll take those and then we'll.
Right,
yeah.
fine. Hi, Randy. Hello.
I'm just about to see it. Yeah.
Hi, Randy McNally. Just want to speak about the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework. I'm affected by the Bell site, so up in Orwell at the M6 junction. Just wondering what progress is going with that at the moment, and is there much research into the environmental side of things, and obviously just one second, I wrote it down. And the traffic wise around the area, because obviously it's a very busy junction on the M6 at 26 there. I'm just wondering about that really.
Yeah, so I said earlier in response to the question about the mayoral preset that one of the reasons why I need that funding is to fund the refocusing of the spatial framework, which I put in train when I was elected. So what we're currently saying is we will put forward the next revised version in June this year. So a lot of work is going on those individual sites. Now I can't give you site-specific information because that's going on at the moment as we speak. But we've published the responses to the consultation. We are trying to refocus the housing side of development back towards the town centres as best we can. Obviously there's a limit and it won't take all of the need for new homes, so we are still going to have to make difficult decisions. There's no getting away from that. But we are on with refocusing, listening where we can, but recognising that we need a plan and we need more homes, we need more jobs, so it's still going to be difficult. But obviously what we're trying to do is listen to communities as best we can and come back with a plan that is obviously a response. But I wouldn't want to give you any comment tonight on the specific site because those decisions haven't been made, and they're for Wigan Council working with the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. But what we're trying to do is obviously minimise the need for Greenbelt. But I'm not going to say to you tonight that there won't still be some need to take green space as part of the spatial framework. It's going to be difficult come what may, but what we're trying to do is come up with a plan that is that responds to the concerns that we heard last year.
Okay, thanks, Andy.
Myra, yeah.
My question's about off-road bikes and 4x4s, which is very near to our hearts. I think the current policy by the police isn't working, and it's a blight on all our landscapes, including all of Greater Manchester. And I want to know if we can do any more to it.
Well, maybe Ian Pilling might want to say a word on this. All I could say is that I saw 6, I think, off-road bikes come up the East Lancs near my house at the weekend doing wheelies up the East Lancs that then went on to go around Ashton and Goulburn, and it is a big problem. But it's not easy to track them down, is it, Ian? So
when you say the tactics aren't working, what do you mean by what are you seeing that you don't agree with?
Well, first of all, we've tried to have meetings, and it's very, very difficult to find anybody to have meetings with these days. Secondly, Liverpool are doing a big stand against off-road bikes, and it's affecting round here in particular really badly, because what we're doing now is really difficult on this area, and we're just not doing anything to help.
Okay, what area is it specifically you're talking about?
Well, the specific area I'm talking about is very local, but I'm sure it doesn't just affect local areas. It's the Green Park in the Plank Lane area.
Okay, I mean, this is an issue right across Greater Manchester and beyond, absolutely.
I'm not being local here.
No, that's fine. There are constraints, as Andy alluded to, with what we can do. We're not allowed to chase motorbikes, for argument's sake, so we have to look at more imaginative ways of doing it. There are various things other police forces are trying. Some police forces are spraying the riders with something called smartwatch so they can be tracked down later. What we try and do is work out where the people live who ride the motorbikes, go around afterwards, seize it from them if we can. So we've got to be more imaginative, but we will meet you with it about it. We'll discuss it with you, and it's disappointing that's not happened. If you want to give me your details, I will undertake to get somebody to come and speak to you.
I think we should, that's a good offer, Ian. I think we should, just because this borough particularly has a, because of the land that we've got, it's attractive, and we have a particular problem with it. And I think all the councillors probably would appreciate, us having another look at what more we can do.
Yeah. We did invest in some off-road police bikes last year, so we have got a team, but it's only a small team. Great Manchester's a big place, but yeah. Okay. Okay.
I don't mind. Norman's got a question, I think, haven't you? So I don't mind taking your question, Norman.
Would it be possible Andy, to hand a petition in on behalf of the people of Atherton to upgrade Hagfall Station to a park and ride?
It definitely, it would.
We've got a petition here, signed by 126 people. So 1,260 people. So, as I say...
It would, Norman, and I'll take that at the end off you. I used to be the MP for Hagfold a number of years ago, as you might remember. It's nice to see Mark and Karen here as well tonight. Generally, I can't give you a promise tonight, but as a general policy, I think we should be increasing parking capacity at train stations and Metrolink stations so that people can park and then use public transport. We've got a massive problem with congestion, and we need to think about anything we can do to help people shift from the car to public transport. Now, I've not looked at the layout of the Hagfold site recently, so I can't give you a promise tonight, but I will take the petition, and we will work with got Amy from Transport for Greater Manchester here. We will look at the proposal and see what we can do, and we'll come back to you.
But as I say, this has been supported by all the councillors in Atherton, and the MP, obviously, for Bolton West. But it's got total support from all the community leaders, put it that way.
Okay, well that's a really positive proposal. I'll take a look at it and see what we can do.
Thanks, Norman.
Hello, Kieran Gallagher. I am aware you are passionate about improving the autism situation within the county. Concerning autism activity within Wigan, which issues need addressing the most, and what action will be taken to ensure these improvements materialise?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking that. I got very involved actually in issues around autism when I was Health Secretary. We did the first autism strategy, and I remember having a number of meetings with people with autism in the borough or their parents, and it opened my mind actually to the whole issue. And I think society still has a kind of very limited understanding of autism and the support that should be put in place, because with the support people can live a completely
fulfilling lives.
Full life, exactly. And so it had a big impact on me, all of that, and it led to me making a commitment in my manifesto for an autism friendly Greater Manchester. Last year we had our first big kind of meeting where we got everyone's ideas about what might that mean. I mean, one specific example would be, let's take the police service. If people who are living with autism go into police custody for some reason, it's somebody who is expert in the condition then being available to help them in that situation, or somebody in the DWP. So having autism champions in public services is one idea. Changing the layout of buildings so that they're more accessible for people. There's a whole range of things we can do, but really keen to make progress on that.
Awareness has greatly improved over the years, but has the diagnostic process improved to accommodate this?
No, and it's a real health service issue as well. No, it hasn't, is the answer. I can remember being told of people in this borough diagnosed in their 50s, 60s, even 70s with autism. People can go through their whole life and actually nobody ever correctly diagnoses it. So you're right, diagnosis is something that should be much better, and often parents have to really battle to get a diagnosis, and it shouldn't be like that.
It took 2 years for me to get a diagnosis for my daughter.
Yeah.
And unfortunately it came when she was 15 and a half.
Too late.
Which has sort of impacted massively on her secondary education. It is something that needs to be really pushed, I think, as well as the facilities. It's about the diagnosis.
You agree?
And finally, how will Brexit affect these issues?
Oh my goodness.
I think we finished with Brexit.
Get that. Very good question. I'll leave that as a kind of tongue-in-cheek question. Yeah.
Okay, right, yeah.
Yeah. Can I just congratulate you first of all on the news we've heard tonight about this piece of legislation that you're proposing about antisocial behaviour on public transport in Greater Manchester. Fabulous. It's long overdue, and we're really pleased that you're applying for this power. And there seems to be government support, but I'm trying to understand, because when you listen to the news summary, you do hear that, but it still requires government approval. And I'm trying to get a timescale on that, so that when I'm approached by people, I can say, well, you know, is it going to be in 3 months' time, or is it going to be in 3 years' time? It's just frustrating, because it's one of the really positive things that people get that you've done in your 7 or 8 months of office. And it's great that you're actually using new powers that we've never had before.
Yeah, no, well, thanks, Frank, Fred. It's a good thing, because it gives Transport for Greater Manchester the power to, well, effectively ban people from trams, from other public transport. So it is a really valuable power. The government have said they're minded, as this classic civil service speak, you know, they're minded to do it, but it does need them to put an order down in Parliament. So, but they've kind of said they're going to do it. So the question is, you know, I've got to work with the MPs to get them to do it as quickly as possible. So they haven't given me a timetable, unfortunately. But yeah, we've got vandalism on trams, we've got vandalism on buses. We need a tougher, you know, we need to help Ian and his colleagues and TFGM have a tougher approach to that, so that we can take, you know, really strong action against the people who are doing this kind of thing. Well, it doesn't. To be honest, it doesn't apply to the trades, because, you know, TFGM don't. It's just TFGM run facilities.
Okay, well, thanks everyone. I think we've run out of time. Andy, you've been brilliant. It's really refreshing to be honest. You've turned everyone's questions. We could, like I said, we could be another 10 hours. Perhaps you come back another time.
I definitely. Yeah.
One more, Andy, please.
Go on then. One more. It has to be the last one. Otherwise, I'm going to.
Thank you. It's the question about the green belt at Junction 25, really. A while ago, the Garswood development was given permission, planning permission, outside with a spatial development. Can you give us any assurance that the green belt at Junction 25 can't be, the permission for development can't be given without it being involved with the spatial development? It can't go through before the June consultation sort of thing.
If I'm honest, I don't know the details in response to that. I don't have, you know, the specifics to hand. So all I could do is I'll have a chat with you afterwards, and I can write to you about that. But
yes, please.
If that's okay. But I don't have all of the details.
Well, I'd just like to say about the green belt. I know we've talked a lot about housing and all the problems with that. But if ever there was a world crisis and we can't import as much food as we do now, if we don't keep hold of our precious green belt, we're not going to have anywhere to grow any food for our local people.
I mean, my whole approach is, I hear what you're saying, and I, you know, a lot of sympathy with what you're saying. My whole approach has been to minimise the take, because if I'll just give one last answer, Janet, on this. You know, my frustration has been, and it's got worse, I think, in recent times. We've become more developer-led when it comes to housing and planning. So developers want to go to the green sites first because they are often more lucrative and it doesn't cost as much to build on them. And we've got to get back to an approach that says, no, build first where the public will support you building, which is in those brownfield sites in our town centres. We're about, we think, to conclude a housing deal with the government, which will give us more ability to clean up contaminated sites and get more housing there. Now, that is the right thing to do, and we are trying to do that with our town centre challenge. All I would say is, it isn't going to kind of solve everything. You know, there's still going to be difficult decisions. And what I'm going to have to do in the final analysis with the 10 leaders is kind of, you know, work out the best compromise that we can, really understanding where there are really precious places that people want to keep, and sort of, you know, as best we can come up with a plan. The point being, if we don't come up with a plan, if everyone keeps opposing what we're saying, that's even worse, because then developers have carte blanche then to go wherever they want. So we do need to agree eventually about what is a plan for Greater Manchester going forward. But all I can say to you tonight is I'm trying to refocus it according to the right principles, so that, you know, we minimise the take of the green space that you're talking about. But I will write to you on the specific if that helps. Janet, can I just thank you for doing this tonight? You know, you've done a brilliant job. Thanks to the Old Courts, you know, great venue. But mainly thanks to all of you for sticking with it and for hearing me out. I just would say finally, you know, that this is a new thing. You know, we're in the early days of devolution, and I just feel we're never going to get this chance again. We've lived all of our lives, all of us, in a very London-centric country, and we've been discussing some of the products of that tonight: the housing crisis, the broken housing market we heard about, the second-class transport system, the fact that we've got rough sleepers all over our streets, the fact that children's mental health isn't good enough. You know, we didn't create these problems, but we've got these problems. This is the best chance we'll ever get to come up with our own answers to those problems, and not just do the thing that Westminster's always imposed upon us. So, you know, I would ask, you know, people, if you found any of this interesting, you know, get involved with what we're trying to build. You know, it is about applying the Wigan deal principle to the whole of Greater Manchester, not just dictating to the public, but letting you kind of shape what we're doing and doing it together, doing it with people. Because if we can get that right, then this place, I think, can really drive forward in the coming decade. I want to get everyone looking at us, talking about us, saying that this is the place where positive things are happening. And I know that will happen if we can kind of work together to get better solutions to some of these big issues. So thank you so much for coming tonight. Thanks for all of your questions, and let's keep working together to take Greater Manchester forward. Thanks very much. Okay, Janet, thank you very much for doing it. Very nice of you.
Sure. Yeah, it's dead sad. Yeah.